First of all, I want to thank Fergus for inviting me, because he doesn't know me very well. So thank you for entrusting me with this opportunity. We've already said today that you like to know here in Northern Ireland, who are you, what school you went to, etc., etc. Well, I'm a Jewish Christian, and I was brought up in a Jewish family, and I came to the Lord aged 19 as a law student at Nottingham University. I married Robert some years after that, and he continues to be an evangelist to Jewish people, and that was almost exclusively in London, where we lived until 2019, when the Lord led us. Well, he led us over the years, but that was the culmination of the leading to come and live here in Northern Ireland. And personally, I didn't know what exactly was the reason for the calling, but I had this Bible verse: I must be about my Father's business. And it's transpired that that business for me is to encourage prayer for Israel ahead of the time of Jacob's trouble, which is part of the end times scenario. We're not quite at the last 7 years of the age, I don't think, but we're very, very close. And I want to introduce what I'm going to say about that with a couple of scriptures to give you a flavour of what is ahead, not just for Jewish people, but for Christians as well. But my emphasis here is to garner prayer for Jewish people. And the first scripture is from Psalm 74. And we don't often think of the Psalms as relating to the end times, but listen to this. Your foes have roared within your meeting place. They've unfurled their banners as signs, like men wielding axes in a thicket of trees, and smashing all the carvings with hatchets and picks. They've burned your sanctuary to the ground. They have defiled the dwelling place of your name. They said in their hearts, we will crush them completely. They burn down every place where God met us in the land. And then secondly, to share with you from Revelation chapter 12. And when the dragon, that's Satan, saw that he'd been thrown to the earth, he pursued the woman, and that's Israel, who had given birth to the male child. That's Jesus. But the woman, Israel, was given 2 wings of a great eagle to fly from the presence of the serpent to her place in the wilderness. So Israel will go to a place of refuge where she was nourished for a time and times and half a time. That's 3.5 years. The dragon, that's Satan, was enraged at the woman and went to make war with the rest of her children, and that's the Christians, who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus. So we obviously want to focus on eternity, on the earthly reign of Jesus to come for 1,000 years, but before that will be a time of unparalleled persecution. And we've heard a lot, and my son Samuel and I, obviously we're not from Northern Ireland, and when we hear these accounts of what happened in the Troubles and the salvations, and we're just so touched. But maybe you'll relate as a people, as a group, to what's happening to the Jewish people in France, and this is what I wanted to bring you today. Over the years, there have been lots of difficult times for Jewish people in France, and that includes shooting of Jewish children and a rabbi outside a school in 2012, 2015, 4 killed in a Jewish supermarket in Paris. 2019, desecration of Jewish graveyard, headstones daubed with Nazi swastikas. And by 2021, there'd been a 75% increase of anti-Semitic incidents. And here's what perhaps you'll relate to, I'm not sure, but it says 1/4 of all incidents happened inside or just outside the victims' homes, typically perpetrated by a neighbour. Now, the Jewish people are very vulnerable in France, and this is partly because there's been mass immigration and very little control by the government to protect the Jewish people, because they don't want to get involved with anything religious, so they tend to keep their distance. But I expect you've heard in the news, it was the 27th of June, so that was within the last 7 or 10 days maybe. A young 17-year-old Algerian was driving illegally, and don't ask me why, but instead of shooting the car tyres, he was shot dead in the chest. And this was like a match to a tinderbox. And over the last 10 days, France has been full of riots, arson, stone attacks. Public transport was shut down after 9 p.m. There were raids on police stations. Rioters grabbed the police's automatic weapons, Molotov cocktails, burning rubbish dumpsters, burning cars. At one stage, the British Foreign Office is warning citizens about travelling to France. There have been power grids destroyed, agricultural fields burnt down, and tourist buses attacked. Now, the Jewish population of France is about 500,000, so that's the 3rd biggest in the world. The largest, obviously, is in Israel. The 2nd largest, as you'd expect, is the United States. But then we get to France, and it's essential for the Jewish people that there's stability in the society so that they are protected. And there are no-go areas in some of the suburbs because of the drug barons and the Islamic forces. And these are just extremists. I'm not saying it's all Muslims by any means. But yeah, the Jewish people are very, very vulnerable. So I'm asking you to pray for a peaceful spirit in France, for the Jewish people, especially their leaders, to have wisdom in guiding their people, for protection by the French authorities, for emboldening of the police and Macron and the government, special protection over Jewish schools, synagogues, shops, cultural area, and God's guidance as to individual Jewish people. Maybe they should move to Israel, maybe they should move out of the cities. But most of all, and finally, to pray for the salvation of Jewish souls in France. Because although the scripture says all Israel will be saved, that does not mean that everyone who is Jewish is going to heaven. That scripture relates to the surviving group from Israel who survived the time of Jacob's trouble. 2/3 will perish, 1/3 will survive, and of those survivors, all Israel will be saved. They'll look upon him whom they've pierced, and they will mourn for him as one mourns for an only child. But meanwhile, we need to be praying for French people to come to know the Lord, but especially Jewish people, and of course for the this is very relevant to Northern Ireland, and to the extremists who, on the Islamic side, they too need to know the Lord. And we know how God appears to a lot of Muslim people in dreams and visions. So, yeah, I appreciate what you said, because it's both sides. Thank you.